بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. We have now gone on to the section of divine providence, Al-Qadaa wal-Qadr, in the book of Imam al-Tahawi, Al-Aqidah al-Tahawiyyah, or Al-Aqidah Ahl-Sunnah wal-Jama'ah. The previous chapter that we did was regarding the mithaq. And the mithaq is, of course, the covenant which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took with every human being before they being brought to this world, in affirming the divine witnessing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator. So this is to showcase that in every one of us, there is the innate dispensation to believe in the one God. And that those who seek proofs for the existence of God, that the intellect has the ability to deduce these proofs, but the soul has in itself a proof of itself, which is the divine witnessing. And the witnessing of the eye in this world is, of course, something which grants direct knowledge. As for the witnessing of the soul in the previous life, this is something which has been imprinted upon the soul forever. So this is what you'll find in some of the arguments for the proof of God. What's called the fitrah argument, the divine, this innate dispensation that we have, which is the fitrah. And yes, the fitrah is also inclined towards that which is good, as opposed to the nafs, the lower self. And this aspect of human nature is what Islam comes to affirm and to build upon as well. One of my teachers, he has a book on this in English as well, called The Fitrah, the Human Nature, and specifically about Al-Imam Al-Ghazali and how he deals with this particular topic. That his name is Professor Yasin Muhammad from South Africa as well. طيب. The author, he says, what does he say? وقد علم الله تعالى فيما لم يزل عدد من يدخل الجنة وعدد من يدخل النار جملة واحدة فلا يزاد في ذلك العدد ولا ينقص منه. That Allah Almighty has always known the number of those who would enter paradise and the number of those who would enter hellfire. A single allocation. This number will neither increase nor decrease. So, what is he saying? This section, before we get into the reality of Al-Qadaa and Al-Qadr, divine providence, he is giving us the foundation of divine providence. The foundation of divine providence, or Al-Qadaa wal-Qadr, is the knowledge of Allah. So he's affirming here the vastness of the knowledge of Allah. Firstly, that the knowledge of Allah includes that which is yet to happen in the world. And that's because, of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is beyond time and space. And He is the creator. And a creator only creates something that which He knows. He cannot create a thing if He does not know that thing. So His knowledge, therefore, extends to include the knowledge of that which He creates. And not simply is He affirming the knowledge of Allah, Because he says, وَقَدْ عَلِمَ اللَّهُ, and Allah has always known. He knows the number of those who will enter hellfire and paradise and hellfire. He also is affirming that the quality, that the attribute of knowledge for Allah is something which has always been with him. It's not something which has appeared to him. Okay, so therefore he said Allah Almighty has always known the number of those who will enter paradise and the number of those who will enter hell. And so this is the first thing he's doing here, is that he's affirming that the knowledge of Allah is vast. It includes everything. Allah knows absolutely everything. There is not a mustard seed in the entire universe, heavens or the earth, except that Allah knows it. What about human beings? Allah created us, so therefore Allah must know us. And that knowledge is beyond the confines of time and space. Therefore Allah knew this before the existence of time and space. وَلِإِثْبَاتِ الْقَضَاءِ وَالْقَدْرِ as well, and to affirm the divine providence. But what is divine providence? Okay. The reason why he's saying that Allah has always known the number of those who enter paradise and the number of those who enter hellfire, a single allocation, is to refute some of the groups that existed before, such as the Qadriyyah, not the Sufi group, the Qadriyyah, the heretical group within theology, who believed that how they asked the question, how can Allah punish someone if Allah had divinely determined the outcome, that they would go to paradise or that they would go to hellfire? Because the outward form of the word Qadaa and Qadr, we say Qadaa. What is Qadaa? It is hakam. It is to place a judgment, to pass a judgment. Like the Qadi, the judge. That's what he's called. The judge is called the Qadi, because the judge passes a judgment. And Qadr, because of the execution of that judgment, of the Qadaa. So the outward form of that word, Allah, he does Qadaa and he does Qadr. He passes a judgment and he executes on that judgment, is to say that Allah is the one who determines the outcome of everything. But this is a misunderstanding. This is not correct. So those who say, how can Allah punish someone who he himself has determined the outcome? Okay. Firstly, if you were to ask that question, there is an aspect to that question which you could say, intellectually, if you were to affirm that Allah is the one who is the owner of everything, then you could say he can do with that which he owns as he pleases. So is the fact that Allah can punish the one who, he himself has determined the outcome, is that something which is impossible? It is impossible in the Sharia, because Allah himself told us that he would never punish people except based on their own choice. But intellectually or logically, is that impossible? No, it's not impossible. Okay, in the same way that the worst of creation, Allah can forgive them on the Day of Judgment and enter them into paradise. Okay, even in the Sharia, we know in what Allah has informed us about Himself is that He can go against that which His warnings. So if He warns people about a punishment, that does not necessarily mean those who commit certain sins will be punished in that way. So someone who committed a sin and let's say the punishment attached to it is a certain level of hellfire, does it necessarily mean that that person will go into that level of hellfire? No. Does it mean that that person will necessarily go to hell? No. But rather, these are warnings that if the person were to actually commit that sin, that they would be qualified in order to go into that particular level of hellfire. So it's important for us to understand, first of all, that when it comes to that which Allah owns, which is the entirety of creation, He can do as He pleases. But in reality, does Qadaa and Qadr mean predetermination? No. The translation of predetermination with this word has been misunderstood and misused. So what is in reality Qadaa and Qadr? It is the fact that Allah knows the choices of His servants. Allah creates us, but before creating us even, Allah knows exactly what each and every one of us will choose. Whether they will choose obedience and belief, or they will choose disobedience and disbelief. And this is a necessary component of Allah creating us, because how can He create something that which He doesn't know? Okay? So if Allah knows our choices and He creates us, does that mean that He determined for us the outcome? No. So then what does hakam mean? What does it mean that Allah passes a judgment and executes on that judgment? Qadaa and Qadr. It means that everything we are, us as human beings and as creation, we are created by Allah. As well as what will come in the next slide, our actions. Our actions are also created by Allah. Because as we mentioned, nothing happens except by the will of Allah, by the permission of Allah and by the power of Allah in reality. But it's still my choice to do that which I want to do. So based on Allah's knowledge, eternal knowledge of my choices, Allah then creates that action when I choose to do so. Is there any oppression in that? We have chosen to do something, and Allah is the one who facilitates either the good for us if we choose to do the good, or facilitates the bad if we choose to do the bad. And so that is what Qadaa and Qadr is. Okay, and there's a very there are hadith that speak about that. We'll mention in a moment. So the answer, therefore, to those who say, how can Allah punish that which the person or people who He Himself has passed the judgment on to do a certain to have as the outcome paradise or hellfire? He's saying, yeah, وَقَدْ عَلِمَ Allah. Allah has always known. So yeah, He's not referring to Allah's passing the judgment, rather He's referring to the knowledge of Allah. That anyone who enters or will enter into paradise is of those who believed and obeyed Allah from their own free will. And so therefore Allah knows their number. He knows everything that will happen. And the same thing for those who will enter the hellfire, are those who disbelieved and those who disobeyed the commandments of Allah by their own will. So therefore it is impossible for Him not to know that which He creates. The ayah of the Quran, أَلَا يَعْلَمُ مَنْ خَلَقَ? Does He not know that which He creates? So therefore, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has passed the judgment, Qadaa and Qadr, and executed on that, what is it exactly? It is Him affirming that which we have chosen by creating for us our actions. Because me as Yasin, I cannot do anything, any action, I can't speak right now, except that Allah granted me and created this ability for me to speak and the actual words. Who chose to say the things that I'm saying? It's me. We have free will in that capacity, but we do not have free power. I don't have my own power. Allah is the one who has all power. That's why we say, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. There is no hawl, there is no might, wa la quwwa, no power, except with Allah. And why do we say that? You know, in the adhan, when the muadhin the call to pray, he says, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Right? And we repeat after him, right, as a recommendation. When he comes to the section of Hayya ala salah, come to the prayer, come to the prayer, come to success, Hayya al falah. What is it that we say? La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Why? Because there's no ability for you to actually do that, which is coming to the prayer, except through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creating your ability to do so. Are you following? And so therefore the Qadaa and Qadr is the affirmation of that which is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge in pre-eternality. So this is very important for us to understand that in Qadaa and Qadr, a lot of people they don't really understand that. Even the Sahaba, among the Sahaba, they initially had the misunderstanding of it, or they asked the Prophet a question which indicated to them thinking that our deeds are predetermined. And the Prophet ﷺ clarified to them that that's not what is meant. Okay, because you have in Arabic words that are used. And sometimes these words, they are used and understood as their literal meaning. But Islam comes to change the perspective of the meanings of those words. Okay? And so therefore sometimes the words are not used literally, but they're used metaphorically. Or they're used literally, but in a way that is understood differently. So one of the hadiths says, عن جابر رضي الله عنه جاء سراقة بن مالك. سراقة بن مالك رضي الله عنه, he asked the Prophet, يا رسول الله بين لنا ديننا. You know, explain to us our religion. كأننا خلقنا الآن فيما العمل اليوم. As if we've been created at this present moment. What should we do? فيما جفت به الأقلام وجرت به المقادير. Should we do that which the pens have written and the Qadr, the execution of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already occurred? أم فيما يستقبل, or that which will still occur? In other words, do we then have, is it still going to be written what we are going to do? Is all of our actions already written, that it's been done, and what we are doing is simply executing that? Or is it something that we are going to do and then it will be written? Okay, so in the reality, as the Prophet then answer says, it is that which has already been written. The pens are already dried, and the execution has already been laid out. So then then what is the benefit of action? Should we just leave our action and depend on the books? What did the Prophet say? He said, "i'malu." No, act. Do your actions. فَكُلٌّ مُيَسَّرٌ لِمَا خُلِقَ لَهُ. Because everyone has been made easy for, everyone, the task has been made easy for them in accordance to what they've been created for. وَكُلُّ عَامِلٍ بِعَمَلِهِ. And every actor is that which is with that which he has. Every actor is with his action. So what is he saying here? They're asking, should we then just leave the books, leave the actions and focus on what the book has already determined? He said, no, act. Because that which you are doing is made easy for you by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala facilitating it. Okay, so what does that mean? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He acts with His servants in relation to that which is in His predetermined or pre-eternal knowledge, okay, based on the choices of the servants, whether that choice is good or bad. So therefore people are of two types, or two divisions. The first division is people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that they will choose obedience and Islam. So Allah created them for Jannah. That's what it means. Allah created them for Jannah because He knows that they will act in accordance to the people of Jannah. And He therefore makes easy their path to Jannah. What does that mean? He creates for them their actions. And if a person, of course, acts in accordance to the actions of people of Jannah, every action you do opens up a door which allows you to do more good action. And this is the idea of, because doing good is an act of gratitude, because you are fulfilling that which Allah wills from you, or that which Allah is pleased with, which is that you worship Him and that you do good. And so therefore, that opens up a door to doing more good, and so that you are given more reward. And so the aspect of everyone is, of course, everything is made easy for the person based on what the choice of the person is, and based on the choice of the person, things are made easier as well for them to enter into paradise. Okay, so therefore, their creation, or them being created for paradise, is simply a result of their choice to do good deeds, which Allah has always done. So yes, it's kind of there's kind of an inception happening, but in reality, what is the case? Allah knows everything. He's beyond time and space. So does He determine based on that which happens in the past? No, He knows everything, and so therefore He creates things as they are today. And these are things that are not only limited to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, of course, in this grand scheme of things, the Qadaa and Qadr is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we have those questions in our lives. Does certain things happen in our life based on the choices that we have made in the past, or the choices that we will make in the future? Oftentimes, we see that when we look back, that which has happened in our life all leads towards a choice that we will make in the future. As if that future choice that you've made determined how you've acted in the past. Okay, it's sometimes difficult to understand, but I'll give you an example. There was once a time where, my university days back in South Africa, I did finally a project, and for media, and it was about the Sunnis and the Shia in South Africa. So I did a project about doing a whole, and I published as a private link on YouTube, but before I could put it private, I published it as a public thing, just for a minute or two, just for literally within less than 5 minutes. And then I realized, oh, it's publicly, let me put it on private. And I never saw any views or anything. So within that few minutes, someone downloaded the video and sent it across YouTube WhatsApp groups, to get people's opinion on these things. And it created a problem. It created a problem where some of the people in the video felt that it was that they were threatened now because they were Sunnis who became Shia, and they felt very threatened. And so I got called into into my university, into the head of the department's office. They found out all these things because it eventually got to some professors. So I'm now worried. Okay, this means that I might fail because there was a breach of security or whatever, trust. And on my way there, I was driving and I was reciting salawat on Rasul, and I recited as many as I could with deep intensity. Allah, I don't know what's going to happen. This is one of my important grades and these things. And on my way there, I was going, and eventually I came into the office to the professor, and so he said, Mr. Kipi, I saw your production, and I heard the issue that happened, but because the quality of the video that you produce and the project is so high that this is something we can overlook, and you'll get an A+ for it. And so I got a good mark for it. At that moment, I was thinking, was the salawat that I made, did that determine the outcome of what's going to happen in the office? Or was it the action that I had produced, the actual project that I had done, that determined the project, the outcome of the meeting? Right. So this was a question which I had, which related to my own, how do I say, sequence of events. Or was it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew always that I would perform that salawat? You know? So, and this was, by the way, a practice that I had always been doing after finishing a project, reciting a certain number of salawat in order for it to be accepted, or any action of work that I used to do. And so there was this kind of sequencing of events that really put me into a, kind of a confusion. But the answer is simple. If it were not for the salawat, that would not have occurred. Okay, but what did I determine? Was that salawat something that I chose? Yes, it was something that I chose. Did it happen after the fact, after the guy already saw the video? Yes, it was also like that. So where is the confusion really? The confusion is simply from our perspective and understanding of divine providence, not in the reality of things. Because without a doubt, these things affect the outcomes of our actions. Okay, that story is a bit, maybe it's not fully understood, but I understood it, and it really had an important impact on me at that moment. Yeah. All right. So then he says, وَكَذَلِكَ أَفْعَالُهُمْ فِيمَا عَلِمَ مِنْهُمْ أَنْ يَفْعَلُوا. Right? Likewise for the actions of people as he knows among them what they would do. Okay? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already knows their actions, because Allah is the one who creates you and your actions, as I mentioned. Then he says, وَكُلٌّ مُيَسَّرٌ لِمَا خُلِقَ لَهُ. وَكُلٌّ مُيَسَّرٌ لِمَا خُلِقَ لَهُ. Everyone is facilitated for what was created for him. Okay? And so we've understood now what that means as well. Okay? Do your actions and hold firm to that which you are doing, without doubting in the fact that what you are doing now in reality is what you seek to use as a qualifier for that which is paradise and that which is closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then he says, وَالْأَعْمَالُ بِالْخَوَاتِيمِ. Deeds are judged as they are at the end of life. Deeds are judged as they are at the end of life. And deeds are judged by the ending. And this is in relation to the hadith which the Prophet ﷺ says that indeed a man will act for a very long time the actions of the people of Jannah. And then he will, at the end of his life, do the actions of the people of the hellfire. And the opposite is also true. A man, for his entire life, he will do the action for a long period. He'll do the actions of the people of the hellfire. And at the end of his life, he will do the actions of the people of Jannah. Okay, and then his Qadaa and Qadr will supersede, and it will appear. In other words, if he's done the actions of the people of the hellfire, then he does the actions of the people of paradise, that he will then end his life in that way, on the actions of the people of paradise. Okay, and this hadith is understood also by what comes next, which is, he says, وَالسَّعِيدُ مَنْ سَعِدَ بِقَضَاءِ اللَّهِ وَالشَّقِيُّ مَنْ شَقِيَ بِقَضَاءِ اللَّهِ. That those who are blessed by the decree of Allah, and those who are damned by the decree of Allah. In other words, are you a believer? Are you a believer simply because you were Muslim at any point in your life? You know, for example, if you became a Muslim, if you're a revert or convert, can you then be classified as a believer your entire life? Or is it that you are a believer, first a disbeliever, then you became a believer? Okay, what is it in reality? In reality, you'd think that, oh, yes, I converted to Islam. But what is written for you is according to what you die as. So if you die as a believer, you've always been a believer, even if you've converted or reverted. And this is the position of the majority of Muslim, of the majority of the scholars. Yes, there is the Maturidiyah, which is the second most amount of Muslims, which is all within part of Ahl Sunnah al Jama'ah. There's a disagreement. They say no, you can go through stages. You can be a believer and disbeliever throughout your life, and then you become. But it's also about how you end your life. Okay. Someone might say that, oh, this is quite unfair, isn't it? How can you most of your life you're a believer and you do good actions? How is it conceivable that someone then at the end of his life will do an action of actions of hellfire? Doesn't that mean that it's predetermined for him, in the sense that he has no choice? Well, there's another hadith which kind of clarifies this previous hadith, which says that the person will do the actions of the people of paradise in that which appears to people. But in reality, he's hiding something deep within him that is of the actions of the people of hellfire. And that anyone who maintains a sin and certain beliefs which is of the people of the hellfire and does not try to fight that and battle that eventually it can appear and it become apparent to people that he is in fact of the people of hellfire in his actions, which can become part of his outward actions in public. And so we understand therefore that in reality this person was never really doing the actions of the people of paradise for a long period, but rather he was simply hypocritical in how he appeared to people, as opposed to other people who are outwardly committing sin, but inside they feel regret and they're doing good actions that are in there. They're doing good actions in private. And that's why the famous hadith which says that a man will be on the day of judgment, 99 scrolls will be brought, and he will be shown all the bad deeds that he committed. The scrolls will be as long as the eye can see, and then he will be asked, are all of these true? And he said, yes, in fact, all of these are true. And he will then be asked, do you have anything as a proof against this? As a proof against this? Because there's the absolute fairness on the day of judgment. No one will be taken into account for anything that they didn't do. And then he said, no, I have nothing. And then the hadith says, a bitaqa will be brought. A bitaqa is like a card, a small card will be brought. And it will be placed on the scale on one side of the scale, whereas all the 99 scrolls on the other side, and it will outweigh all of those scrolls. And the hadith says that this person, he mentioned La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah with conviction. And this was part of his routine. That he was someone who of dhikr and someone who believed in that dhikr. And so that is why, even if you are the worst sinners, to maintain a connection to dhikr and to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to salawat, even just like 10 times a day to recite La ilaha illallah in the morning and the evening, or at least 100 times if you can do 100. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi. that is a great salvation, because it's something which is part of your soul that really wants to. It's kind of a sign that you are trying to change and trying to be good. Okay. So the Sa'id, when it says وَالسَّعِيدُ مَنْ سَعِدَ بِقَضَاءِ اللَّهِ وَالشَّقِيُّ مَنْ شَقِيَ بِقَضَاءِ اللَّهِ. This is referring to, of course, the what do you call it? The that which is written in the womb of the mother, when a child, when the soul is placed in the womb of the mother after the first 40 days. That is why the chapter before this was about the covenant, because that covenant is the divine witnessing which occurred before this world. And this as well, when a soul is placed in the child in the womb of the mother, the angel also writes four things. Right? He writes the rizq, the wealth of this person, when he will die, and what actions he will do, as well as lastly whether he will be Sa'id or Shaqi. In other words, he's already this Sa'id or Shaqi, this whether he's felicitous or whether he's damned. This is based on his actions that he will do in his life, that he himself will choose. But it's a sign for the angels. It's a sign for those who see whether this person is damned or not. And it's not for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah does not need any of these things. But rather it is within creation that this is something that. طيب. And then he says, وَأَصْلُ الْقَدَرِ وَأَصْلُ الْقَدَرِ سر الله تعالى في خلقه لم يطلع على ذلك ملك مقرب ولا نبي مرسل. The basis of providence is that it is a secret of Allah Almighty in His creation. In other words, what is the reality of it? Is it something that you can really conceive? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed something, and this is something that you really understand. It's not possible to understand the reality of it, just as it's not possible to understand the essence of Allah. Can you conceive and conceive of the essence of Allah? No, it's impossible. How can the limited encompass the unlimited when the unlimited gave you your limitedness? So this is what he's referring to here, that it's a secret. It's a sirullah ta'ala fi khalqihi. Even the closest of angels or the prophets, they have not been given full knowledge of Qadr. Yes, some of them have given parts of the knowledge of Qadr, but not full knowledge of Qadr. Okay? And then he says, because when we say Qadr, what do we mean by Qadr? There are two ways of using it. You say, this is the Qadr of Allah. In other words, Allah determined this is what Allah chose. Okay, when people use the word Qadr as such, they say, "Oh, this is what Allah determined." They don't mean it as this is what Allah chose and you have to abide thereby. No, that's not what they mean by it. That usage of the word Qadr is a word which is used in Arabic as well for the word hikmah, for wisdom, and inayah, and care. So Qadr can be used as such. This is the Qadr of al-Taqdeer. That doesn't mean, oh, it's the determination of Allah. So we have to separate between the way it's used, the way it was used in our tradition and how people use it today. No, when you say this is the wisdom of Allah, there's a wisdom behind it. There's a Qadr behind it. As opposed to the Qadr of Allah, the Qadr of Allah, that is related to our actions. Allah creates our actions, and we based on our choice. Okay, so there are two different understandings of the word Qadr. What do we mean by Qadr in reality? And not the hikmah. We say Qadr, when it comes to the Qadaa and Qadr, it is Allah placing that which is in reality upon what He has determined in His Qadaa of goodness, of evil, of benefit, of harm. based on the choice of people in this world that he has known. Okay, so it's very simple really to understand this. And so therefore he says والتعمق والنظر في ذلك ذريعة الخذلان وسلم الحرمان ودرجة الطغيان. That delving and investigating deeply into that is a cause of loss. What does he mean by that? To try to understand the reality of Qadr, because it's like trying to understand infinity. Have you ever seen someone try to understand infinity? They'll go insane. It's a path to insanity. And he says it's a cause of loss. What is loss? Khidlan. Khidlan in reality is the creation of actions which facilitate an evil ending for a person. In other words, if your choice to try to encompass the reality of that which is relating to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, essence, not in terms of attributes of Allah. Yes, we can understand the attributes of Allah to an extent so that we know who Allah is. But when we talk about the lack of understanding of the essence of Allah, this is something which is very logical, because you cannot encompass Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore it is a means for khidlan, which is of course the creation of actions which lead to a negative end. Okay, why? Because trying to investigate this type of matter is really trying to understand a wisdom or a reality that is based on the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which has been hidden from creation and has been hidden from creation for a purpose. Okay, what is that purpose? So that we believe. And that if we were given insight into reality of things, would you then have a reason then to believe and to be rewarded for your belief based on, your own intellect and trying to attempt to understand things, and then also, believing in Islam that comes to us? Or do you want to have to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself? Would you want to have to see an angel? Or do you want to have to see some sort of miracle happening every moment? Yes, there are miracles, but the greatest miracle really that you can think of is this present moment. Like, how is it possible that we are in this moment experiencing anything? That is the real miracle. So, and if you were given insight into the unseen and into some of these realities, would you then have an excuse in front of Allah if you committed something, if you committed a sin? And this is why people should never seek unveiling before their time, to see the reality of things, because you'll never have an excuse after that. And then if you're punished, you can never think, okay, why am I being punished? So then he says, فالحذر كل الحذر من ذلك نظرا وفكرا ووسوسة. Thus take extreme caution from that type of investigation, thinking and insinuation. For Allah has hidden the knowledge of providence from his creatures and has prohibited them from seeking it. As said by him in his book, لا يسأل عما يفعل وهم يسألون. Yes, he's saying, فَالْحَذَرْ كُلَّ الْحَذَرْ. He says, extreme caution. This is, of course, a form of exaggeration which is necessary. Because why are you seeking that which Allah has made haram or prohibited from you seeking? Not only because it is impossible, but because seeking that will lead to your disbelief. Because if you think that you can understand it, and once you try to understand it, you realize that no, it's impossible. You think that, oh no, I was not created to believe in Allah, because there's no clear proof from the fact that I don't understand the reality of Qadr. So then he says, whoever asks why Allah did something, he has rejected the judgment of the book. Because Allah is not questioned about what he does, but you will be questioned. And whoever rejects the judgment of the book is a man among the disbelievers. Right? Why? Because it's impossible for you to understand it in reality. Then he says, فهذا جملة ما يحتاج إليه من هو منور قلبه من أولياء الله تعالى. This is, a summary of what is needed by those, in terms of knowledge, of those who have enlightened hearts among the saints, among the allies of Allah Almighty. Okay. So this, what does he mean by this? This is a summary of what? The summary of the belief in the divine providence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? What does that mean? That they know it, they understand it, and that they act in accordance to what it necessitates, which is the prevention of trying to understand its reality. And of course, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala therefore illuminates their hearts with the light of certainty, and that they become of his close chosen servants. That's why in the Quran Allah says, أَفَمَنْ شَرَحَ اللَّهُ صَدْرَهُ لِلْإِسْلَامِ فَهُوَ عَلَى نُورٍ مِّن رَبِّهِ. The one Allah expands their chest to Islam, in other words, they open their hearts to Islam, he is upon a light from his Lord. And then he says the reason behind this and what is the cause of this. He says وَهِيَ دَرَجَةُ الرَّاسِخِينَ فِي الْعِلْمِ. That this is the degree of those rooted in knowledge. For knowledge in the creation is of two types. أن العلم علمان. علم في الخلق موجود وعلم في الخلق مفقود. Right? It's knowledge which is accessible and that is understood. And then there is knowledge which is inaccessible and not understood. Okay, so there is that which you know and that which you don't know. فإنكار العلم الموجود كفر. Okay, so to deny the knowledge that is present, accessible, understood, is disbelief or unbelief. And to claim وادعاء العلم المفقود كفر, and to claim to know what is inaccessible is also unbelief. Right? So the knowledge which is present in the world and in creation, it's that which is understood through proofs, clear-cutting proofs, either through your own experience or through theoretical arguments that are based on proofs that are accurate. Okay. So knowledge, for example, of the Creator, with that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided us of the signs of his oneness and his uniqueness, and his pre-eternality and the completeness of his knowledge and his power and his wisdom and his being transcendent of any qualities of deficiency, any signs of being contingent, and all of these signs of Allah's majesty and his generosity and etc. in the creation, and knowing that which the Prophet ﷺ came with of laws and of admonitions with regards to the Sharia and the Quran and the halal and the haram. All of this is what knowledge that we have, knowledge that is present. That this is what we've been doing in the book thus far. We've been learning about. If you deny this, it's disbelief, right? Because it's knowledge that is present and understood. As for knowledge which is not present and cannot be understood or is not understood, this is knowledge Allah has made hidden, such as knowledge of the unseen, and knowledge of Qadaa and Qadr, divine providence, and knowledge of the time of the day of judgment. Allah says in the Quran, قُلْ لَا يَعْمَلُ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ الْغَيْبَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ. No one in the heavens or the earth knows the unseen except Allah. Right? So seeking this knowledge and claiming this knowledge more so is disbelief. Because why? Because it is claiming to have knowledge of that which Allah has explicitly said that He has hidden from creation. Does this mean that Allah cannot give some of His servants increased of knowledge in this which is not? No, it doesn't mean that. Allah can grant knowledge of these certain things or aspects of these things, but not entirely, because Allah is infinite. So how can you have knowledge of Allah entirely? Because that which is infinite is impossible to be understood by that which is limited. But indeed, when the Prophet ﷺ is commanded in the Quran, when the only thing is commanded to do in the Quran, to ask for an increase in, is an increase in knowledge. And so therefore the Prophet ﷺ, his completeness is always increasing in knowledge. And part of that knowledge is knowledge of the reality of existence. And so the Prophet is given more and more knowledge. And when the verse in Surah Isra, Bani Israel, says, ask, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ, and they ask you about the reality of the soul. What is the soul? The Prophet says, وَمَا أُوتِيتُمْ إِلَّا مِنْ عِلْمٍ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا, that you've only been given of its knowledge but a little. And this is referring to the creation. But he never said, and I have only been given of it a little. So that indicates that the Prophet can be given knowledge beyond that which is the normal knowledge of the creation. All right. So inshallah, that will be Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. That's the end of this presentation. If you have any questions, inshallah, and inshallah, if there are any questions, please ask. I have heard. Sorry, I only saw your question now. I didn't see the message. I've heard the analogy, I think attributed to Abu Hanifa, though I couldn't source it, that the way to understand free will in Islam is like a boat at sea. You can choose where the rudder is pointing, but the seas and the winds and the boat itself out of our hands. Is this correct? So the analogy that you are trying, that you made here, is of course referring to the fact that you yourself will determine where you are going, because you're still you're pointing the rudder at the particular aspect of the ocean that you're trying to go to. What does it mean by the seas, the winds, and the boat itself are out of our hands? It means that the reality of that which we are experiencing has been given to us by Allah. Are you able to think with thoughts other than the thoughts that you think with? It's like a riddle, right? You're not able to think with. And this is what a lot of people, when they have existentialist crises, why? Based on traumatic experiences or based on things that they can never change in their life, where they wish that they could have changed or helped someone, but because they couldn't, they start to doubt reality itself. And then they ask questions like, why am I thinking about why? How am I thinking about how I'm thinking about why? And then this is infinite regress of thoughts, which ultimately leads to negative, a state of negativity, and a state that they will never be able to come out of, except with the realization that there are things out of your control that you are being placed in. You have to act in accordance to that. And then once you realize that, you'll then realize the divine blessing that it is, that you've been given life, and you've been given witnessing of experiencing life. And so this is something which is ultimately, yes, this is how it's understood. You must remember that when you read the books of the mainstream Muslims like the Ash'ari, if you read the outward aspects of what they're saying, it might appear to be that things are determined and that you don't have a choice. But this is not what's meant. That they use this word in accordance to how the Prophet ﷺ spoke. Okay, in terms of the outward words, because the way the words have been used have been transformed from the original meaning, or they've been understood in a certain way. So therefore, it's very important to when you read these books to understand it properly and not to understand it in a very literal sense. And that's why we have these hadiths, which even the Sahaba asked questions about determinism, etc. And so when it comes to the aspects of the theology or ilm al-kalam or aqidah, which people say, oh, we don't go deeply into these masail. Look at all the Salaf, look at all the people of the first generation. They never asked these questions. And a man once he came to Sayyidina Umar asking him about some of these questions, and he just hit him on his head and he said, tell him to go, and that he's causing problems in the community. That is from a certain perspective of going into matters which are clearly outside of the scope of discussion and out of the scope of the capacity of knowledge that people have at that time. It's not referring to going into matters like we are discussing now about the nature of Qadaa and Qadr from the perspective of how it affects our actions, how it affects our lives, and how do we understand it as Muslims. We're going to stay on the same Zoom for the next class, or
we'll go on to the other one. So I'll just hang on.
Okay, just make sure that you share the link, inshallah, with everyone.
Inshallah, we'll do.
جزاك الله خير.
So